Member for Morialta.
Sir, my question is to the Minister for Education, Training and Skills. How many places in the government skills agreement will be reserved for or available to the non-government skills sector? And with your leave, sir, and that of the House, I'll explain.
Leave orders leave granted. Member for Morialta.
Thank you. The government has just announced a skills agreement claiming 150,000 places over the next 5 years. But this matter does not appear to be detailed in the publicly available information, certainly not the Minister's press release. A substantial portion of skilled training in South Australia, especially for apprentices and trainees, is undertaken by non-government providers, including both industry-led not-for-profits and independent providers. In the recent rounds of the fee-free TAFE program, many such providers were given very few or no places.
Minister.
Speaker, and I thank the member for Morialta for the question. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to talk about the very substantial skills agreement that the Premier and I just announced, along with the member for Adelaide, not more than an hour ago. And we all know the challenge that is in front of us as a nation. I know the member for Morialta knows that too. We are amidst a national skills crisis, and there is a lot that we need to do, not just to meet existing demand, Speaker, but also to plan for future demand, particularly in areas of state priority. If we were to look at things like AUKUS and the delivery of preschool for 3-year-olds and hydrogen, there are big workforce challenges and targets that we need to meet to make sure we deliver on those opportunities as well. What has been announced in the last 24 hours, Mr Speaker, and then announced by the Premier and I this morning is that we have signed up to a 5-year national skills agreement with the federal government. Within that is 150,000 training places over 5 years, which is a 50,000 increase in places. I asked the agency to go back and do a little bit of work on how long it has been since this state has seen an uplift of this magnitude in our state, and the answer was they couldn't find one bigger in recent memory. So I think that paints a picture for the House of the significance and magnitude of the agreement that we have struck today. To the specific question that the member for Morialta asked about how many of these places will be available to private or not-for-profit training providers. There certainly will be. We know, and I have said, I think since day one of being the Minister for Training and Skills in South Australia, that if we are to be serious about getting on top of the existing shortages that we have and being able to actually deliver on the workforce targets that we have for some of those priority areas in our state, we will need all parts of the training and skills sector in South Australia working together. I think that we were pretty upfront in what we delivered within the first 12 months of government, and the member for Morialta refers to fee-free TAFE. Well, I can say that in the 12,500 places that we delivered in an agreement with the federal government at the end of last year, there were, I think, something like 2,000 of the 12,500 that were set aside for not-for-profit and some for-profit providers as well, which was significantly more than a lot of other jurisdictions did. And that was done because we had said, and it was 12,500 more fee-free places than the previous government offered, Mr Speaker. So, but we had said from the outset that we needed to make sure that all parts of the training and skills sector, we said from the outset that we needed all parts of the training and skills sectors, government, for-profit and not-for-profit, working together to make sure that we get on top of existing demand and vacancies and plan for future demand, and we delivered that in a very significant way in the first tranche of fee-free TAFE places that we offered, which have all been expended now, such was the uptake. But in terms of the 150,000 places, Mr Speaker, that the Premier and I announced today in conjunction with the Commonwealth Government, a lot of those will be accessible by for-profit and not-for-profit training providers. Now, today we have announced the envelope, the amount of money behind it, a 5-year agreement worth $2.29 billion, uplift in the vicinity of more than $600 million for South Australia alone, and the heavy lifting in terms of that uplift actually being done by the South Australian State Government, by the Malinaskis Government, with more than $400 million of that uplift coming from this government here. And we will now work with it, making our own skills plan and using the power that we have protected to be able to decide our priorities ourselves in terms of exactly what professions and qualifications will be available under that 150,000 places, and then we'll be able to communicate to the sector, government, for-profit and not-for-profit about what will be available to them.
Supplementary from the member for Morialta.
Has the government determined a figure in line with the federal government on how many places will go to non-government providers, or is that negotiation still to take place?
Minister.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the member for Morialta for his supplementary question. There is a body of work that we will need to do now as we put together the state's skills plan. We have now secured the money and the subsidised places that we believe we need to help deliver on existing shortages and plan for future workforce demand, particularly in areas of state significance. And I mentioned before AUKUS, the introduction of preschool for 3-year-olds and for hydrogen as just 3 examples. So we will do the skills plan work now to make sure that we decide and allocate those 150,000 places in areas where there is that need and where there is that demand. And of course, we will be working with the private sector as well as the government training provider TAFE and as well as not-for-profit training providers as we put together that skills plan to talk to them around how they can play a role in the delivery of the 150,000 training places over the next 5 years that we have secured.
Further supplementary, member for Morialta.
In relation to the $1.4 billion the government has announced that this government will invest in the agreement, was any of that already in the forward estimates of the state budget, and if so, how much?
Minister.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the member for Morialta for his question. In terms of precise figures, I think it's a $690 million of uplift or money that is new over and above what we would have already been spending as a state. That is new. Of that, I think it is $440 million from memory is state. The difference between the $440 and the $690 million figure is federal government new money to put together a total uplift in the vicinity of $690 million of new money. And as I said before, upon preparing to make this announcement today with the Commonwealth, we asked the agency, the Training and Skills part of the Department for Education, about how long it had been since we had seen an increase in new money uplift like that in South Australia, and they went back no, that wasn't their answer. Their answer was they went back as far as they could, and they can't, in living memory, can't remember an increase like this. The biggest increase, in fact,
Minister has
Speaker,
to call.
the biggest increase,
Member for Florey.
the biggest increase, Mr. Speaker, that the department, this is the agency responsible and who has done a lot of the grunt work in the negotiations, and I think it's a good opportunity for me here today, Mr. Speaker, to pay tribute to the people in the Training and Skills Department for the huge body of work they've done in the last few months to come to an agreement in a relatively short period of time. I mean, let's put this in perspective, Mr. Speaker. We've been a government for about 18 months, thereabouts. The Albanese Labor government for a shorter period than that. This is the second national skills agreement we have signed in that time. That is how serious we are about this. That's how serious we are about this. And we announced 12,500 fee-free places for South Australia alone at the end of last year. 12,500 fee-free places for South Australia alone at the end of last year. 10,500 of those for TAFE, 2,000 to be shared by for-profit and not-for-profit training providers, and they are basically all gone. They are all gone. All used already, and we've now signed up to new fee-free TAFE places as well. So I won't accept any kind of in fact, I am reminded, Mr. Speaker, the former Skills Minister, I think, was unable to secure an agreement with the federal government at all. When I came to the role, there was no agreement.
Member for Unley. Member for Florey. Minister has the call.
I'll put it as simply as I can, Mr.
Minister
Speaker.
has the call.
4 years, no agreement. 18 months, 2 agreement. 4 year, no agreement. 18 months, 2 agreement. I cannot make that any simpler for you over there. Okay. 4 year, no agreement.
Member for Morialta
18 months,
is warned.
2 agreement. Okay. In 18.
Minister, please be seated. The Member for Murray Alta is making a spirited contribution. It is, however, contrary to the standing orders, he is warned for a final time. The Minister. The Minister has the call.
I think I will conclude my remarks there. Thank you.
Very well. Unless it's a supplementary, I'm going to turn to the member for Newland. Member for Newland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Premier. Can the Premier expand for the House about how the Malinauskas Labor government is investing in skilling South Australians?
Premier. Premier has the call. Premier, there's a order. Premier, please be seated. There's a point of order. The member for Murray Alta,
Thank
point
you,
of order.
sir. Standing Order 97, the framing of that question contained argument and purported fact.
Order. There was a significant number of interjections. It was difficult to hear the question. I'm going to give the member for Newland another opportunity.
My question is to the Premier. Can the Premier update the House about how the Malinauskas Labor government is investing in skilling South Australians?
Order. The order. It's a matter of fine judgment. There may be a order. Member for Hammond. Order. However, I'm going to turn to the member for Newland, give her an opportunity to recast the question. It may be possible to frame the question without introducing any argument or fact, just to reflect generally, or ask a general question in relation to the same subject matter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Premier update the House about how the government is investing in skilling?
I'm going to order. I'm going to permit the question. Premier. Order.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the member for Newland for a question. The member for Newland, I know, has spent a fair bit of time in her electorate talking to local businesses lately, and the member for Newland has made it clear to me that the questions that have been raised with her, the issues that are being elevated for her consideration amongst her businesses in her community are the same that we get everywhere we go on this side of the House around our great state. We've got the lowest unemployment rate in South Australia that we've ever experienced in our history. Never before has the unemployment rate been lower than what it is today. And that is an outstanding statistic. It is an outstanding demonstration of how strong the South Australian labour market is. But for businesses in the member for Newland's electorate and elsewhere, it means it is hard at the moment to find access to skilled labour. We have got an extraordinary pipeline of work coming our state's way, Mr. Speaker, in almost every sector. But it's particularly true when we think about just the big projects, for instance, whether it be the Women's and Children's Hospital, the completion of the North-South Corridor, or, of course, the naval shipbuilding work we have down at Osborne. There is a pipeline of demand for skilled labour in this state unlike anything we have ever seen. So now is the time that this government decides to make one of the biggest investments in skills we've ever seen in our past. The Minister for Education, Training and Skills has been working overtime in recent months to land a historic agreement with the Commonwealth that sets us up for the next 5 years, a $2.5 billion investment in skills and training in our state, over $400 million of which is brand new money that this state government has contributed to more skills in the hospitality sector, more skills in the construction trades, more skills in renewable energy, more skills in advanced manufacturing. We are heeding the call of the employers that exist in Newland and in every other seat around the state. We understand, sir, that right now in South Australia the biggest constraint to economic growth isn't a lack of demand, but a lack of access to labour that is skilled. Now, the only way we're going to address that is if we invest it. We, on this side of the House, believe, Mr. Speaker, that you don't have to go to university to have a great job. You don't have to go to university to have a good life with an outstanding standard of living. but you can improve your standard of living through the acquisition of an apprenticeship or a trade or some other degree of skill that is desperately in need out in the economy today. So that's why we are so grateful to be able to partner with the Commonwealth with this step-change investment. But it's not the only one, Mr Speaker. This comes on top of the free TAFE places that this government has invested in. This is on top of our commitment to reinvesting in trade schools and technical colleges in our high schools. This government is serious about investing in trade and skills. Now, these are the types of investments that can make a material difference, not just for employers, but also for the individuals who acquire this knowledge through the state government's investments. These are life-changing policies for the people that are the beneficiaries of them. 150,000 young South Australians will be the beneficiary of this $2 billion agreement, of this record investment from our state, because we believe in our young people. We believe they deserve the opportunity for a good job in a growing economy.
Order. The member for Maralta.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister for Education, Training and Skills. Will non-government training providers receive subsidies equivalent to those received by the government provider under the new skills agreement in return for delivering the same courses?
Minister.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the member for Morialta for his question. I'll have to take that on notice because, as I said in the answer to my thoughts to the member for Morialta's earlier question, we have the envelope of funding now. Big uplift, 150,000 places, 50,000 over and above what we would have been delivering. We now do the work of the skills plan where we work with all parts of the South Australian economy in terms of what we need in terms of new workers, particularly for those priority projects for South Australia. And we'll work with for-profit, not-for-profit, as well as the public training provider TAFE in terms of what they believe they can deliver out of that envelope of 150,000 places. In terms of the specific question around what subsidy will private providers attract compared to what, for instance, TAFE might attract or not-for-profit training providers might attract, I can't answer that off the top of my head. I'm happy to find out. But I want to reject any insinuation. I'm not suggesting, of course, that the member for Morialta is doing this, but I want to reject any insinuation that in some way we are taking a position which is anti-private providers, because we are not. And I can tell you that as the minister in the chair, I pushed hard when we had that first 12,500 fee-free TAFE places, or fee-free places, 10,500 of which were TAFE, 2,000 which were for-profit and not-for-profit, that if TAFE didn't feel that it was able to deliver them all, then we should absolutely be making sure that they are available to other parts of the training sector as well. And I will maintain that philosophy. I'm not here to try to sew everything up in a nice sort of bow for TAFE, but we are serious about rebuilding it. We have said that from the start, and we are making that investment. But I think it is important that we remember that in a comparatively smaller jurisdiction like ours, with very big workforce targets in a number of key areas, that we do need all parts of the training and skills sector to be working together if we're to be serious about getting on top of the demands that we have both now and into the future.
Supplementary member for Morialta.
In relation to the 150,000 places the minister described, how many of them are going to be available next year and the year after? Is it 30,000 a year or some other breakup?
Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. We'll look at that as part of the skills plan. It's 150,000 across the lifetime of the agreement, so the 5-year agreement. We'll look at what the phasing is of the position, of the subsidised spots that are available as part of this agreement. That, again, is probably something that I will want to sit down with the sector and talk about, because it's not just about divvying them up and handing them out. We need to sit down and talk to all those providers, government, not-for-profit and for-profit, who hopefully will be a part of delivering the 150,000 around what their capacity actually is. That's an important question for all training providers, including TAFE. I'm sure all training providers out there, whether they are public, private or not-for-profit, are very keen to access some of these, of course, but I need to have reassurance as the Minister, as the Premier and Cabinet does, that they are able to actually deliver them within the lifetime of the agreement. That's part of the body of work that we need to do that will make up the skills plan in terms of who will access them, how many will be available in each year of the 5 years of the agreement, and then what the specific qualifications and courses might actually be where we make them available, because we know, for instance, we have In my own portfolio areas, our commitment for the introduction of preschool for 3-year-olds, the Royal Commissioner Julia Gillard set out some very precise workforce numbers that we need to meet that. We have it for AUKUS in terms of the facility that will actually build the subs, and then the workforce we need to build the subs themselves, and then things like hydrogen as well, not to mention existing demand in the construction and building industry. So that's a piece of work we will do over the next few months, and I'll be very happy to come back to this place and provide both the member for Morialta and the rest of members in this place with some more detail as we go.
Very well. Member for Morialta.
Thank you, sir. My question is to the Minister for Education, Training and Skills. Will the Malinauskas Labor Government deliver an increase to commencements of apprentices and traineeships during this term compared to the last full year of the Liberal Government?
Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. Well, of course, commencements are important in terms of what goes in the front end. I don't disagree with the member for Morialta there. We need to increase the number of South Australians in training. But what we know is nationally we have an incredibly inefficient training and skills system. If you look at all forms of training and skills, whether it's a traineeship or an apprenticeship or other forms of training that Australians might be accessing, I think it is actually just below 50%. So only around 1 in 2 people who actually start training actually finish it. Now, of course, that is a bad result for the student, for the trainee or the apprentice. It is a bad result for prospective employers who are desperately crying out for more skilled workers. It's also a really bad result for taxpayers, including South Australian taxpayers, because that is ultimately taxpayer money which is going towards offering the subsidy on that course. So we know that although having more people come in and commence a course is certainly important, what we need to focus on to make our system more efficient and actually make sure we get better bang for buck for the South Australian and Australian taxpayer is a serious bit of work on completions. And South Australia, we have put our hand up to lead that piece of work, and we have started that process, and I reported back to skills ministers recently in Hobart around the work that we had done there. And I'm pleased to see that in some of the most recent data we have, we've seen a 4.8% increase in completions, which I think is an important thing. We know we need to do more in terms of the support that we wrap around particularly young people in training. I think in days gone by, government has viewed its role as one of providing the subsidy and then stepping away. But I think we know that there is a role for government to play beyond that now in terms of some of the mental health and wellbeing supports that all our employees, particularly those with apprentices, tell us they need to get someone through from the commencement to the completion. And that's what we're up for as well, and that's why I suggested that South Australia be the state to lead that piece of completion work, which we are now doing.
The member